Welcome to week 7 of the Elestriad, where Drewby, representing Aeolus and the Wind Pantheon, is throwing down against POWDR, representing Zeus and the Thunder Pantheon. This clash is one that has some serious implications. If Drewby's able to take the win this week, by the way, some spoilers if you haven't watched the other matches, if Drewby's able to win this one, he is actually going to clinch a playoff spot, finishing 4-3, and has a tiebreaker over Johnny based on strength of schedule standings. If POWDR is able to win this one, he will foil Drewby's playoff hopes, and Shady and Johnny will instead advance to the next round and the playoffs of the Elestriad. So this one's massive. If you guys didn't see the breakdowns, you can check that out on the channel as well. We talked about what decks they're bringing, what they open, everything in between, but this one's looking to be pretty insane. Drewby's got everything on the line. His back is against the wall. He's got to win this one. And POWDR, well, he's got nothing to lose, but he can certainly make a statement if he can finish at 3-4. Let's dive into the clash and find out how this one's gonna unfold. All right, let's dive into this one. Very excited about this clash. I also do want to take this opportunity to let all of you casters out there know that the clash between MBT and Magnitude is not going to be happening this week. It's going to end up just being a forfeit on that one. Unfortunately, Steve was just way too sick to play that clash, and it didn't make any difference for the standings, so that one will not be happening. But Drewby's gonna mulligan on turn 1 to get a fresh hand, and then he finds Astrabit, a very, very good opening play. I think Astrabit's actually been one of the most cast cards this season in the Elestriad. You can always check out all of the stats on Elestriad.com, which will be updated in the next few days to kind of recap all 7 weeks of clashes, which is pretty sweet. And of course, if you guys have enjoyed the season, show some love, hit that like button down below and subscribe. POWDR's going to respond right away with a Toxion that's going to chip away at Drewby. And I got to say, I love POWDR's strategy this week. He's got Eruptions, he's got the Toxions, and Drewby generally has leaned on Wind, Pantera, Hydrake, Aeolus. That is an expensive combo. That is a combo that utilizes a lot of spirits, a lot of resources to make happen. So if he's able to kind of stay on top of things, if POWDR's able to kind of, you know, store those Eruptions, kind of methodically burn away at Drewby, kind of catch him off guard, overextending with an Aeolus play mid-game, that could be what POWDR's looking for. But he's going aggro early on. He's going to enchant his Zeus up. I like this play. He's going to be able to disenchant the Zeus, which is going to target down that Astrabit and drop its stats. And that is going to allow Toxion to hit over it. And Drewby now has a choice. Do you respond? If you're Drewby and you have an answer here, it's not the end of the world because he did have to waste a spirit. I like to try to think of when I'm playing Elestrals, how much is my opponent using spirit-wise to make this play versus how much am I using spirit-wise to make this play. He does let the rabbit go down, and it turns out to be a very positive play for him because now he's got Hydrake out and he can crash right into the Toxion. Is that how this is going to unfold? He's going to set a rune face down. And now Hydrake has the opportunity to crash into this Toxion, both of them sitting at 4 attack. It looks like the crash is going to happen. That means we're going to see a Twindra hit the field already. Drewby's second turn of the clash, and he's got Twindra. This is exactly how you want to execute Pantera. The earlier out you can put pressure on with Pantera, the better off you're going to be. Oftentimes, you want to exhaust your opponent's resources before you try to execute a strategy like this. But I think if you're running Pantera, it makes a lot of sense to kind of go big right out the gates, because it's so spirit intensive, as I kind of alluded to earlier. But there's a Shield of Achilles. POWDR is prepared. Shield of Achilles, 3 spirits. That's going to bounce that thing right back to his hand. Excellent execution from POWDR there. I think he nailed it exactly as he wanted to. You bounce the Twindra back because it's dead in Drewby's hand. It's not a good card to have in your hand. You want it in your deck. Oftentimes, decks like this will run Drops of Leaf just because you don't want to draw into it. So POWDR does have to spend those extra spirits to get that Shield of Achilles. It's a 3 spirits, but he was taking 2 anyway, right? So that's what I talk about when I kind of think of how that works. And Drewby lost the spirit on Hydrake. So overall, what I consider to be a really good exchange for POWDR there. He's got to be feeling good about that. And then he's going to drop his Astrabit, again, further setting him up to find those key pieces that he's looking for. That Eruption, I think, is a big one here if he can kind of put some burn damage on. Drewby almost has to, like, reset his game plan. He had it all going well for him, that Hydrake into Toxion, then to Twindra, but POWDR was ready, and that's kind of the development we've seen throughout the Elestriad. Not only have these casters been able to add cards to their card pools to make big strides in terms of the strategies they can employ, but their skill set have all increased as well, which I think has been really fun to watch. From my perspective, a lot of these, everyone in the Elestriad is, friends of mine. POWDR lives like 10 minutes from me, Drewby I've hung out with a ton of times. So it's really cool for me to see these people, taking the time to play the game that we're all trying to build together, which is awesome. And then, not just that, but really putting in the effort to improve their skill set and really you know, become adept at the game, because I think Elestrals has a lot to offer in terms of competitive depth. So as Astravid does hit the field, Drewby seems to not have any sort of a play here. POWDR's still on the more defensive side of things. He's gonna set a rune face down, and he's reaching for a spirit deck. He is gonna throw down another Toxion. This is what you want to see. If you're POWDR, you're putting on a lot of pressure, and now Astravid can go into attack position as well. This could be a 3-spirit swing here if Drewby doesn't have an answer. And honestly, this is not the situation where you really want to do anything to Toxion or Astravid, because you know, you tsunami them, you stop 1 spirit of damage, right? Maybe it gives you a chance to hit over the Toxion, but then the Astravid is in a less favorable position. If you shield the, you know, both the Astravid and the Toxion are not really targets that you want to shield, because they can just use their effects again. But there is going to be the tsunami, so we do see that play there. Not surprising to see that one. I think that's a good strategy, right? I mean, if his other back row is duplicates of that, if he has 2 tsunamis, I think that makes a lot of sense. If he feels confident in something like a shield, that makes sense. I think you want to get rid of the Toxion also is a key focus right now if you're Drewby. A lot of times I try to save my counter runes like Tsunami for when I can get advantage. So in this context, if you have nothing to respond to, then, you know, it becomes a little tricky. You know, if you don't have an Elestral that you can put onto the field to take out the Toxion, then, you know, using a Tsunami here doesn't really give you much of an advantage. It's saving you 1 spirit, which, again, not all that impactful. Drewby tries to sneak a Tsunami there instead of a Water Spirit, but it looks like they caught that. Probably just a fun mistake. They're all laughing about it. That's funny. He goes to grab that Tsunami. Very, very cool. I will tell you, there's an interesting card that I'm working on. Little spoilers for those who watch the Elestriad. There's an interesting card that's coming next summer to the game, and it does some really cool stuff. It looks into the underworld in a unique way. It allows you to choose one of those cards from your underworld, and then your opponent actually gets to decide what happens next, which I think will be really fun, and it can be really, really strong in the late game we've seen. If you've kind of filled your underworld up with some good stuff, then you make that choice a little harder for your opponent, but I should stop talking about all the fun stuff to come. We've got a Nectar of the Gods here from Drewby. That's going to allow him to draw 2 cards. I love that. This is a really good time to play Nog. We talk about playing Nog early game. This is a good time for him. He really needs to get something in his hand to start making some momentum here. Another Hydreigon Pegas could be pretty solid. That could potentially get rid of the Zeus or the face down rune and then pop the Toxion. Those are the kinds of cards you're looking for right now if you're Drewby. But it seems as though he doesn't have an Elestral. He's just going to pass. We don't see any cast. Now he's forced to try to put himself on the defensive again. You know, again, having that Twinger in hand, not being able to execute that strategy makes things very difficult. Toxion is going to be able to change to attack position here. He's going to actually re-enchant it, which is going to hit for another burn damage. Love that, and that could potentially hit Drewby even harder. And I feel like the trade is not bad here, because again, if Drewby does decide to go for like a Shield of Achilles or something, it's really not going to threaten the Toxion. You just give him a chance to do it again on the following turn. So Drewby continues to get whittled down here. Here comes 2 Earth Spirits, and it looks like a Wind Spirit. That's the damage he's taken. So he's down to just 5 spirits to go. POWDR sitting pretty with 3 on his Elestrals on field, 10 in the bank. Here comes a Thunder Spirit. It's going to be an Astravid to defense. That's a good one. If you're Drewby, that's what you're looking for. You need to start to climb back into this one. He needs to get an Ascension off. This is going to allow him to grab something from his deck, maybe a piece that'll help him out. He already used an Ambrosia. Obviously has good back row. So now you have to deal with, okay, he's obviously going to Zeus, and then he's going to put some offensive pressure on that. If you're Drewby, that's what you're thinking here. So how do I stop him from doing that? And he's going to play that Ambrosia. That's going to allow him to get even more spirits back. So it looks like he fell into that. I'm not sure if that was one of his face down runes. For those who don't know, a fun aspect of Elestrals, if you have a full rune row, like you have 4 face downs or 3 face downs and a divine or whatever, you can still cast an invoke rune by throwing one of those cards away, basically. So obviously you can use spirits on field to enchant, invoke, and counter runes, but if you had like 4 face down runes, you can send one of them to the underworld to clear the space to cast an invoke rune. So that's a very specific mechanic that, again, we try to build in some rules like that, like expend the draws, like using spirits on field for invokes and counters, things like that, to allow players to find some ways out of tough situations in a late game. But here comes Sparkit, dude, and this is not what you want to see. Sparkit's going to rip into his hand. He's going to be able to Nexus things around. If I'm POWDR, I'm Nexusing from Zeus to Toxion. I don't think that's what he's going to do. He could do Toxion to Astravid. He's going to go to Sparkit. So, little tip for POWDR. I think if you're POWDR in this situation, you want a Nexus to get the advantage. That doesn't give you an advantage. And this is why. If you he ends up getting Gorgon's Gaze here. We could do a quick listen in. But, you know, the reality of it is, if you're going to Nexus like that, you want to either hit your Toxion or you want to hit your Astrabit, because that's going to give you an advantage. So you either go from the Zeus to one of those, or you go from Toxion to Astrabit there. That's what I would recommend. I think I missed the listen-in window, but we'll see what they're talking about.
If you announce that you plan to Nexus with Sparkit,
yeah,
spirits have not moved yet.
Okay.
And Drewby has the opportunity to respond. If he responds with Gorgon's Gaze,
okay,
that will negate the effect, so the Nexus will not happen.
Okay, so it just goes back to where it was, and Sparkit just continues on the field as if it just entered in, pretty much.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so I caught the tail end of that, Bo giving some instructions, but basically the way Gorgon's Gaze interrupts Nexus is you can activate it in multiple timing windows. You can actually activate the Gorgon's Gaze in response to Sparkit's announcement of Nexus, which means that the Nexus doesn't happen, or you can do it after the Nexus, which makes the when you do effect not happen. Oftentimes, I will lean on the second option. I'll have the Nexus go through, and then I'll stop the effect afterwards. This is a situation where you want to stop generally before the Nexus happens, because you're trying to prevent Powder here from getting that advantage we just talked about, the Astrabit or the Toxion hit, right? So here comes the Tsunami. Drewby's down to very few spirits, but again, I just want to re-emphasize that Gorgon's Gaze play can be in multiple timing windows there. This was the time to do it before the Nexus. Oftentimes you'll do it after the Nexus because you want to get those spirits from the Rune row onto the Elestral row, assuming you can take advantage of the next turn. But obviously the scenario will play out in various ways, and you're going to want to use what makes the most sense there. So here comes an Ascension from Drewby, trying to get back in this. Is this going to be a Misenchanted Twindra? That would be pretty spicy. It's going to be the Griffuse. Oh, baby. Does he have enough spirits to pull off Volt Tempest? He needs one more to do the Zeus, and then he needs one more for the Ascension. He has enough to pull off a Volt Tempest, but it would be unprotected Volt Tempest. So he's thinking about his choices here. Does he have the Divine Rune to make this happen? Zeus or Aeolus? He does. He can go Volt Tempest mode, but Powder is not low enough to make a difference here. He does not have the ability to pop off a Volt Tempest, and he's not going to have protection because he's going to lose the Zeus. He needed this just a little bit earlier in the game. Volt Tempest does hit the field here. Only one spirit to go. He does disenchant. He's going to pop for 3, but again, I don't think... Oh, he has to go for that other spirit. Yep, so he's down to 0 spirits. He does need that. He has the opportunity here to try to pop and hit for 3 damage with the Volt Tempest, and then he has to attack Toxion. That's his only out right now. But if any of Powder's face-down runes are able to stop him, this one is over. And again, no protection for Volt Tempest because the Zeus is gone. He does pop. He is going to hit for 3 here. This is going to come down to the wire. I gotta believe that Powder, with 6 spirits left, can find an answer here. He actually chooses not to attack. Drewby chooses not to attack here, which I think is a mistake because all Powder has to do is enchant the Toxion, but he's just gonna drop an Eruption here. It's not gonna matter. The Eruption comes off perfectly for Powder, just as he's planned it from the get-go. He's going to be able to burn the remaining spirits away from Drewby, and Powder is going to take away Drewby's playoff hopes right here, right now. Looked like Drewby bricked at the end. That was pretty rough. So Drewby had his strategy working perfectly at the beginning, getting out that Twindra, but a well-timed Shield of Achilles bounced it back to his hand, and it sat there alongside, seemingly, I think it was another Twindra and a Pantera. Lots of bricks there for Drewby. Powder played this miraculously, though. He had his Astrabit, he had his Toxion. He utilized that burn damage, as we talked about in the pregame of this. He also kicked off that Eruption right at the end of the game to seal the deal, despite the fact that he was facing down a Volt Tempest. He held off that Volt Tempest just long enough, and he was able to clinch the victory of this clash. That's going to end Drewby's Elestriad season, and Powder's is over too, but I'll tell you, he's ending on a very high note at 3 and 4. Congratulations to both these casters for coming in here, learning Elestrals, doing their thing, and having a blast doing it. I hope you guys enjoyed. Be sure to check out both of these casters and their channels. Thank you so much for watching. We've got playoffs next week for Elestriad. I'll see you guys there.